Flashing red and blue lights sliced through the rain-soaked night, their reflections twisting and distorting across the slick pavement like something out of a nightmare. The wail of sirens had died down, replaced by the intermittent crackle of police radios as two officers stepped out of their patrol car, scanning the dimly lit street for the source of the commotion. And there she stood. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, the relentless thorn in my side, was planted in the middle of my driveway, her rain-damped blouse clinging to her frame as she crossed her arms, eyes ablaze with righteous fury. Her entire body quivered, whether from rage or the biting cold I couldn't tell. She raised a shaking finger, pointing directly at me, her voice splitting the night. "Arrest him!" she shrieked, her voice shrill and sharp enough to send a few porch lights flickering on in the surrounding houses. "This man refuses to comply with community regulations. His generator is disturbing the peace, and it's ruining our neighborhood." I leaned casually against the side of my garage, arms folded, watching the scene unfold as if I were an audience member to some absurd, low-budget sitcom. The officers, clearly unimpressed, exchanged tired glances before one of them, a stocky guy with graying temples, sighed and turned toward me. His partner, a younger officer with sharp eyes, examined the roaring generator beside my garage. "Sir, we got a noise complaint," the older officer said, rubbing a hand over his face. "Mind explaining what's going on here?" I smirked and gestured toward the humming machine. "Officer," I said, "do you have any idea what this generator actually powers?" The younger officer tilted his head, an eyebrow arched in curiosity. As if on cue, his radio crackled. He glanced down at the receiver clipped to his shoulder, his expression shifting from mild interest to something far more serious. His eyes darted between the generator and the device in his hand as realization dawned like a sudden bolt of lightning. "Wait a minute." His voice wavered as he took a step closer, staring at the machinery as if it were some ancient artifact hiding an earth-shattering secret. This thing is powering our dispatch system." Karen's face drained of all color. The same woman who had spent weeks rallying against my so-called public nuisance now looked like she had just swallowed a mouthful of vinegar. I sighed, crossing my arms tighter. "Yeah, it is. Weeks ago, when the HOA, my own personal tribunal of petty tormentors, declared war on my generator, I had anticipated a fight. I live in a suburban neighborhood where everything from the shade of your mailbox to the number of inches your grass is allowed to grow is dictated by a board of retirees with too much time and not enough sense. Unfortunately for them, I don't do well with ridiculous rules. You see, I'm an ex-military engineer. Now, I work as a private contractor, but my expertise in emergency infrastructure has made me something of a local hero when things go south. When a storm knocks out the grid, my generator is strong enough to keep an entire block running. When the local clinic faces an outage, my setup ensures they don't lose power. So when Karen, clipboard in hand, an expression that screamed, "I have nothing better to do," showed up at my door weeks ago, I knew exactly what was coming. "Your generator," she had started, adjusting her glasses like some bureaucratic villain, "is in violation of our noise ordinance." I had sighed. "Karen, I've already told you. It's within legal limits, and it's necessary. Do you know how many people rely on it?" She had waved a dismissive hand, lips pursed like she had bitten into a lemon. "Not my problem. The HOA has strict guidelines to maintain the serenity of our community." I had almost laughed at the irony. Serenity in a neighborhood where kids screamed like banshees every evening and lawnmowers roared at dawn? "What do you want me to do then?" I had asked, though I already knew the answer. "Turn it off permanently." I had shaken my head. "Not happening." Her face had twisted into something cold and venomous. "Then I'll have to report this violation to the HOA board. We'll issue fines, and if you don't comply, further action will be taken." I had smiled. "Go ahead." And so she did. Within days I was bombarded with violation notices. HOA fines, even threats of legal action. They even had the audacity to claim my generator was an eyesore and demanded it be removed for aesthetic reasons. But here's the thing. My generator wasn't illegal. I had every permit in place, and more importantly, it was classified as critical infrastructure. But Karen didn't care about that. She was too obsessed with her crusade, too blinded by the fantasy of controlling my property to see the bigger picture. So she escalated. She went door to door, rallying the other HOA members, painting me as some menace to society. Some neighbors believed her, others, like Steve, a retired firefighter and one of the only sane people left, weren't buying it. "She's on a rampage," Steve had warned me one evening, shaking his head. "Told my wife your generator is ruining property values." I had chuckled. Sounds about right. What do you think? I think she's a nut job, he had said flatly. That generator kept my house warm during last winter's blackout. She can go pound sand. But Karen wasn't just going to pound sand. And tonight, she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The older officer turned to Karen, arms crossed. Ma'am, he said, his voice laced with exhaustion, did you just call 911 to report the very thing keeping emergency services operational? Karen's mouth opened and closed, her jaw working like she was trying to form words but had lost the ability to speak. A shade of red crept up her neck as the reality of her blunder set in. I didn't know, she finally muttered. The officer sighed, shaking his head. Well, now you do. I bit back a smirk as I watched Karen, trembling with frustration, storm off into the night. But I knew this wasn't over. Because Karen, she never knew when to quit. Karen's voice still rang in my ears, that shrill, self-righteous screech demanding my arrest. The officers were still standing there, caught between disbelief and exasperation, their hands resting on their belts like they were contemplating whether this was worth the paperwork. But Karen, oh, Karen! She was already backpedaling. The color had drained from her face, her lips parting in rapid, silent movements as her mind scrambled for an excuse. You're lying, she finally blurted, stepping forward with a wild look in her eyes. This is ridiculous. He's just making up excuses to keep his noise machine running. The officer closest to me, the younger one with sharp eyes, ignored her completely. He tapped his radio again. Dispatch, confirm power source for emergency communications. A burst of static, then a crisp voice came through. Affirmative, backup power linked to registered private generator. Without it, emergency response will be compromised. Silence. Karen's face contorted like she had just swallowed a mouthful of spoiled milk. She turned to the officers, eyes pleading now instead of raging. This can't be right, she muttered. I mean, how is that even legal? The older officer sighed, rubbing his temple. Ma'am, he said, exhaustion laced in every syllable, did you just call 911 to complain about the very thing keeping emergency services operational? Karen's mouth opened, then closed. She had nothing. For the first time since this war had started, Karen had no words, no threats, no clipboard stacked with HOA regulations to shove in my face. She stood there, her fists clenching and unclenching, as if she were physically grappling with the consequences of her own arrogance. The younger officer shifted on his feet. You do realize, ma'am, that making false emergency calls is a crime? Karen's nostrils flared. I thought... You thought wrong, I cut in smoothly, crossing my arms. Just like you thought you could bully me into shutting this down, just like you thought you could control every inch of this neighborhood. But here's the thing, Karen. I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough so only she and the officers could hear. You don't get to decide who has power, and you sure as hell don't get to decide who needs it. Karen let out a choked noise somewhere between a scoff and a whimper. The officers exchanged glances. Finally, the older one turned to me, nodding. Sir, sorry for the trouble. You're clearly within your rights. No problem, officer, I said with a smirk. But maybe you should remind Karen here that abusing emergency services is, a felony? The words landed like a sledgehammer. Karen gasped, her eyes going wide with fear. You can't be serious. The officer gave her a long, hard look. Ma'am, if we weren't dealing with a citywide blackout right now, we'd be citing you for misuse of emergency resources. Consider this your warning. Karen looked like she wanted to scream, like she wanted to stomp her foot and demand the world bend to her will, as it always had, but there was nothing left for her to say. Then, without another word, she spun on her heel and stormed off into the night. I let out a slow exhale, watching her disappear into the darkness, shoulders hunched, fists clenched, but I knew her too well. It wasn't over. Not even close. Sure enough, the next morning, as the sun barely peeked over the horizon, I stepped onto my porch and saw it, a fresh, crisp notice taped to my door. Bold red letters glared back at me. Violation notice, unauthorized equipment, $500 per day, fine. I chuckled, shaking my head. Karen was doubling down. An hour later, my phone buzzed. Steve? You see the new HOA emergency rule? Yeah, I sighed, sipping my coffee. Karen's really lost it this time. You're officially a menace, Steve said, barely suppressing his laughter. She convinced the board that your industrial noise pollution is a neighborhood hazard. I pinched the bridge of my nose. And yet, she was the first one pounding on my door when the lights went out. Yup. Hypocrisy at its finest. "So what's the plan?" Steve asked, his voice light with amusement. I smirked. "Oh, I've got something in mind." Karen had taken her public humiliation on my driveway about as well as I expected, by storming off into the night, rage boiling beneath her carefully curated facade. But if there was one thing I had learned about her by now, it was that she didn't know how to take a loss. So when I woke up the next morning, I wasn't even surprised to find a fresh violation notice taped to my front door, its bold red letters glaring at me like some HOA-issued death sentence. Violation noticed, unauthorized equipment. Fine, $500 per day. I sighed, peeling the paper off and tossing it onto my kitchen counter. Karen was doubling down. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. New email from the HOA board. I tapped the screen, already knowing what I was about to read. Subject: HOA, emergency meeting, new regulation update. Erasmus. Effective immediately, all personal generators are prohibited within the community. Non-compliance will result in further action. I nearly choked on my coffee. She actually did it. Karen had called an emergency HOA meeting, twisted whatever logic she could, and somehow convinced the board to ban generators overnight. She wasn't just trying to find me out of existence, she was going for a total ban. Before I could process the full absurdity of it, my phone rang. "Steve, you see the new HOA rule?" he asked, amusement barely concealed in his voice. "Oh yeah," I said, rubbing my temple. "Karen's really lost it this time. She's convinced the board you're a menace," Steve continued, clearly enjoying the absurdity. "Told them you're disturbing the neighborhood with industrial noise pollution." I let out a humorless chuckle. "And yet she was the first person to show up at my door begging for power when the lights went out." Steve chuckled. Hypocrisy at its finest. "So, what's the plan?" I smirked, already formulating my next move. "Oh, I've got something in mind. Underscore 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 underscore. That evening the storm had passed, and the city's power grid was slowly crawling back to life. But the HOA wasn't done harassing me. Two of Karen's little minions from the board showed up at my house just before sunset, clipboards in hand, their self-importance radiating off them like a bad cologne. The taller one, an older guy with a permanent scowl, cleared his throat. "Mr. Daniels," he said, attempting his most authoritative tone, "your generator is now in violation of HOA policy. You'll need to shut it down immediately." I raised an eyebrow, arms folded. "You do realize this thing powers the emergency center, right?" The second board member, Todd, a weasel of a man with beady little eyes, sniffed. "That's not our concern. Rules are rules. If you don't comply, we'll escalate this legally." I fought the urge to laugh. "Okay," I said, leaning against my door frame. "Then let's go legal." They blinked. "Excuse me?" I smirked. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. According to state law, no homeowners association has the right to override a system classified as critical infrastructure. You try to fine me, I'll countersue for harassment, damages, and interference with emergency services." Their smug expressions collapsed. Todd's lips parted, but no words came out. Finally, he stammered, Well, we'll have to consult with our legal team." I shrugged. "Take your time, but while you do, maybe check out what happened to the last lock-who that tried to fine someone over an emergency power source." I let the moment stretch before delivering the final blow. They ended up paying a 6-figure settlement. That did it. The two of them scurried off like frightened rodents, practically tripping over each other as they retreated down my driveway. But I wasn't naive. Karen wasn't giving up. Not yet. Underscore 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 underscore. The next day I was in my garage, tightening a few bolts on my truck, when I heard the distinct rumble of a tow truck pulling up outside. I wiped my hands on a rag and stepped out just in time to see Karen marching up my driveway, clipboard in hand, her lips curled in a triumphant smirk. Behind her, a hired goon, probably some guy she found through the HOA's bottomless pit of bad decisions, stood beside the idling tow truck, arms crossed like he actually thought this was going to happen. "We're here to remove the generator," Karen announced smugly, her voice practically dripping with self-satisfaction. I blinked. "Excuse me?" Huh? She lifted the clipboard like it was the 10 Commandments of HOA tyranny. "You were given notice," she continued, "and you failed to comply. As of today, this generator is considered unauthorized HOA property, and we are within our rights to have it removed at your expense. I exhaled a slow, controlled breath, feeling a dangerous kind of amusement bubbling beneath the surface. You do realize this is theft, right? I said evenly. Karen's smirk faltered just for a second. It's an HOA-ordered removal. I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up. Well then, I said, hitting the dial button, I guess I'd better call the police and report a felony. Karen's face twitched. The tow truck driver cleared his throat. Lady, he muttered, if he calls the cops, I'm not getting involved in this. Karen whipped around, glaring at him like he had just betrayed her. You were hired to do a job, now do it. The driver took one more look at me, then back at her. Then, shaking his head, he climbed back into his truck and peeled out of there. Karen's face turned purple with rage. You haven't won, she hissed. You're ruining this community. You're a nuisance, and I will see to it that you're removed. I crossed my arms, smirking. Good luck with that. But I knew her. She wasn't done yet. No, she was about to make her most desperate move yet. Karen stood there, arms crossed, her smugness radiating like she had already declared victory. You were given notice, and you failed to comply, she announced, her voice dripping with triumph. I exhaled a slow, measured breath. You're actually trying to tow my generator? Karen's smirk deepened. It's HOA property now. Per Emergency Bylaw Adjustment Section 4.1, the HOA has the right to remove any non-compliant structure at the homeowner's expense. I blinked, then let out a laugh, an actual full-bodied laugh. You do realize this is theft, right? I asked, crossing my arms. Karen's confidence wavered just a fraction. No, it's an HOA-ordered removal, she stammered, adjusting her clipboard like it held the key to justifying her insanity. I pulled my phone from my pocket. Well then, I guess I'd better call the police and report a felony. Karen hesitated, her grip tightening on the clipboard. The tow truck driver, a burly guy with a grease-stained uniform, cleared his throat. Lady, he muttered, shifting uncomfortably, if he calls the cops, I'm not getting involved in this. Karen turned on him, eyes burning with frustration. You were hired to do a job. Now do it. The driver glanced at me, then back at her. Whatever paycheck she had promised him clearly wasn't worth the headache. Nope, I'm out. And just like that, he climbed into his truck and peeled out of my driveway, leaving Karen standing there, her face flushed with rage. Her fists clenched at her sides. You haven't won, she screeched. You're ruining this community. You're a nuisance, and I will see to it that you are removed. I smirked, arms still crossed. Good luck with that. She stormed off, but I knew she wasn't done. No, Karen never knew when to quit. And sure enough, she was about to make her final, most desperate move. Underscore, 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 underscore. The next day I stepped onto my porch and found an envelope waiting for me. A lawsuit, delivered like an overpriced pizza, except this one was cold, stale, and had Karen's fingerprints all over it. I tore open the envelope and scanned the contents, shaking my head at the sheer absurdity of it. The HOA was suing me for creating a public nuisance, violating community peace ordinances, ignoring HOA bylaws. Translation, Karen was still throwing a tantrum because she couldn't control me? As I skimmed through the lawsuit, Steve, my retired firefighter neighbor, walked up my driveway, a coffee in one hand, a knowing smirk on his face. She really went and did it, huh? He snorted. Oh, yeah, I muttered. Filed a whole lawsuit. Probably spent a fortune on a lawyer just to try and shut me down. Steve let out a loud laugh. This woman's got more free time than sense. But Karen wasn't just suing me. Oh, no. She had gone all out. The HOA had filed an official complaint with the city, claiming my generator violated zoning laws, which meant the city was sending out an inspector. And just to top it all off, Karen had somehow convinced the police to investigate me again, this time for illegal power usage. Yeah, she was trying to get me arrested. Underscore, 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 underscore. The next afternoon I was under my truck, checking the oil, when I heard tires crunching on my driveway. I wiped my hands on a rag and stood up just as a city inspector, flanked by 2 police officers, stepped out of their vehicles. The inspector adjusted his clipboard. "Mr. Daniels?" "That's me," I said, eyeing the officers. "What's this about?" The taller cop sighed, rubbing his temple like he was already exhausted. "We received a complaint that you're operating an unlicensed generator, and there are concerns about power theft." I stared at him for a long moment, then turned my gaze toward Karen's house across the street. Sure enough, there she was. She stood on her porch, arms crossed, grinning like she had already won. I fought back a smirk. She had no idea what was about to happen. I turned back to the inspector. "Let me guess, this complaint came from Karen?" The inspector hesitated, then nodded. I laughed. Wow, she's really desperate. At least the inspector seemed reasonable. "Look, sir, this is probably just a routine check. If everything is up to code, there won't be any issues." I waved a hand. "Go ahead, I've got nothing to hide." The officers and inspector got to work, checking permits, noise levels, and power output. Across the street, Karen was watching intently, her eyes glinting with premature victory. But then, after 30 minutes, the inspector stepped back and nodded to the officers. "Everything checks out," he said, flipping his clipboard closed. "The generator is fully permitted and is even registered as emergency infrastructure." Karen froze. The officer next to the inspector nodded and added, "And as we confirmed last time, this generator powers emergency dispatch and medical services." The first cop turned to me. "Sorry for the trouble, sir. You're good to go." Then the officer turned his full attention to Karen. "Ma'am, you do realize that filing false reports wastes police resources, right?" Karen's face lost all color. "I wasn't making a false report," she stammered. He's disturbing the peace. He's violating HOA rules." The cop raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, HOA rules do not override city laws. This is the second time you've falsely reported this man. If you do it again, we'll be forced to take legal action against you." Karen's jaw dropped. But he... "No buts," the officer interrupted. "This is harassment. Consider this your final warning." I could almost hear her teeth grinding as she stood there shaking with rage. I turned to her and gave a small, satisfied wave. "Have a nice day, Karen." She let out a strangled sound and stomped back into her house, humiliated once again. But I knew the truth. She wasn't done. Not yet. The officer turned to me, shaking his head. "Sorry for the trouble, sir. You're good to go." Then he turned his full attention to Karen, who was still standing on her porch, her arms rigid at her sides. "Ma'am, you do realize that false reports waste police resources, right?" Karen's face drained of color. I wasn't making a false report," she stammered. He's disturbing the peace. He's violating HOA rules." The officer raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Ma'am, HOA rules do not override city laws. This is the second time you falsely reported this man. If you do it again, we'll be forced to take legal action against you for filing false complaints." Karen's mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. But he... "No buts," the officer cut her off sharply. "This is harassment. Consider this your final warning." She stood there, trembling with rage, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. I couldn't resist. I lifted my hand and gave her a slow, deliberate wave. "Have a nice day, Karen." The officers and inspector left, their cars pulling away into the fading sunlight, leaving Karen standing on her porch, fuming. She had tried to use the police to shut me down, but instead, she had just made herself their #1 nuisance. And her day was about to get a whole lot worse. _____________________ That evening, as I sat back in my chair enjoying the quiet, my phone rang. It was my lawyer, and from the amusement in his voice, I knew it was going to be good. "You're going to love this," he said, barely containing his laughter. "Oh," I leaned forward. "Hit me." "The city just responded to Karen's lawsuit," he said. Then he laughed outright, and they counterfined the HOA for attempting to interfere with emergency services. I nearly dropped my phone. "Wait, what?" "Yep," he confirmed, clearly enjoying himself. "Not only is the lawsuit getting thrown out, but the HOA is now facing penalties for harassment and obstruction. They're looking at a pretty hefty fine." I exhaled slowly, letting the satisfaction sink in. "Oh, this is beautiful." "And here's the best part," my lawyer added. "The city is investigating the HOA for misuse of funds. All these ridiculous legal actions Karen has been pushing. They've drained HOA funds, and the city wants to know where all the money went. Karen's little power trip had just set off a financial earthquake, one that might bankrupt the entire HOA. I couldn't stop laughing. Karen had spent months trying to destroy me, and now, because of her own obsession, her beloved HOA was about to collapse under its own stupidity. Underscore. The next morning, coffee in hand, I stepped onto my porch and took in the peaceful sunrise. Across the street, Karen was pacing furiously in her driveway, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing wildly as she yelled at whoever was on the other end. I could only imagine the conversation. And then, as if the universe had decided to gift me a perfect moment, a city official's car pulled up in front of the HOA office. I watched as the official nailed a notice to the HOA bulletin board. Furious, I wandered over, coffee still steaming in my hand. A few neighbors had gathered, whispering among themselves. I took one look at the notice and read it out loud. Notice: due to repeated legal violations and misuse of funds, this HOA is under financial review. All fines, fees, and legal actions are temporarily suspended, pending investigation. Behind me, Karen screeched loud enough to rattle windows. I grinned. Game over. Underscore. That afternoon, the HOA held an emergency meeting. I didn't even bother attending. I already knew what was happening. The board members, who had once followed Karen blindly, had turned on her like a pack of starving wolves. They blamed her for everything: the lawsuit, the wasted money, the city investigation. By the end of the night, Karen was officially removed from the HOA board. And me, I was untouchable. As I sat back on my porch that evening watching the sunset, Steve wandered over, his usual smirk in place. "You hear the news?" he asked, taking a sip from his beer. "Oh yeah," I said, stretching my legs out. "Karen finally lost." Steve chuckled. "I bet she's furious." I sipped my coffee, grinning. "Oh, definitely. But don't worry. I'm sure she's cooking up some new ridiculous way to get back at me." Steve laughed. "Probably. But after today, she's going to have a hard time getting anyone to listen." I leaned back in my chair, taking in the peaceful evening air. For the first time in a long while, the neighborhood actually felt calm. And best of all, my generator was still humming like a champion. The HOA emergency meeting had been an absolute disaster for Karen. The moment the city announced its financial review of the HOA, the rest of the board panicked. I wasn't there, but Steve filled me in later, and oh, was it glorious. Karen walked in, all smug, he said, still chuckling at the memory. "Thought she was going to rally them to take you down. Instead," he took a sip of his beer, "they turned on her like a pack of starving wolves." Apparently the board members, who once blindly followed her, weren't thrilled that Karen had dragged them into a lawsuit that was now backfiring spectacularly. Mark, the HOA treasurer, was the first to snap. "Do you have any idea how much this is going to cost us?" he had shouted, his face red with frustration. Karen, ever the self-righteous villain, had waved a dismissive hand. "It's just a minor setback," she had said, refusing to acknowledge the mess she had made. "We can still fight this." But then the real bombshell dropped. The city's audit revealed that the HOA had been misusing funds on a massive scale. Tens of thousands of dollars had vanished, most of it spent on legal consultations. And where had that money gone? Karen's personal attorney. That's right. Karen had been funneling HOA funds into her own legal crusade against me, and now the entire board was on the hook for it. That night I was out in my driveway, casually polishing my truck, when I saw something beautiful. Karen, red-faced and seething, stormed out of the HOA office, her phone pressed to her ear, screaming at whoever was unfortunate enough to be on the other end of the call. A few board members followed, yelling at her. Linda, an older woman who had once been one of Karen's closest allies, finally snapped. "You lied to us," she shrieked, hurling a stack of papers at Karen's feet. Karen stammered, attempting to defend herself, but no one was listening anymore. By the end of the night, Karen was officially removed from the HOA board. But that wasn't the end. Kara had done too much damage for them to simply kick her out and move on. She was personally on the hook for the money she had wasted, and now she was looking at a lawsuit of her own. Underscore 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 underscore. A week later, my lawyer called me. "You're going to love this," he said, barely containing his amusement. "Oh," I smirked. "Hit me. Karen's lawsuit against you completely dismissed?" I grinned. "Not surprising. But here's the fun part," he continued. "The HOA is now required to compensate you for harassment." I nearly choked on my drink. "Wait, what?" "Yep," he confirmed. "They're cutting you a check for $20,000. I stared at the check when it arrived, feeling a satisfaction like no other. Karen had spent months trying to destroy me, and now I was getting paid because of her stupidity. But it got even better. Karen wasn't just removed from the HOA. She was forced to sell her house. Turns out after the HOA's finances were audited, Karen owed more money than she could afford. She had drained so many funds for bogus lawsuits and petty battles that the HOA had no choice but to sue her personally. Her only way out: sell her house to cover the damages. About a month later, the for sale sign went up in Karen's yard. Steve and I sat on my porch, sipping our drinks, watching her pack up her belongings with a miserable expression. "You think she learned her lesson?" Steve asked, raising an eyebrow. I snorted. "Not a chance." Sure enough, Karen wasn't going quietly. Underscore 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 underscore. In the following weeks, I started hearing whispers from neighbors. Karen was trying to badmouth me online, spinning some dramatic sob story about how I had ruined her life. She painted herself as the victim, claiming she had been unfairly targeted. But the problem? Nobody bought it. The HOA board? They hated her now. The neighborhood? They were thrilled to see her go. Even the city officials who had dealt with her never-ending complaints, they considered her a joke. Karen had burned every single bridge. And now she was gone. Underscore 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 underscore. The best part? The new HR leadership actually thanked me. Once Karen was out, the remaining board members completely restructured the rules. No more ridiculous fines. No more Karen male dictatorship. In fact, they even approached me with an unexpected offer. "Mr. Daniels," the new HOA president said, awkwardly clearing his throat, "we'd like to offer you a role as our emergency power consultant." I laughed out loud. At first I thought they were joking, but then they offered to pay me a monthly stipend just to keep my generator running in case of emergencies. The same HOA that once tried to shut me down? No, they were paying me to keep doing exactly what I had been doing all along. Oh, the irony. At first, I laughed in their faces. The same hickory that once tried to shut me down was now offering to pay me a monthly stipend just to keep my generator running for emergency use. Oh, the irony. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just a victory. This was revenge, served on a silver platter. So yay, I took the deal. Now instead of being harassed by the HOA, they were literally paying me to keep doing what I had been doing all along. Life was good. Bubble.com/proteins or F underscore 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 underscore. A few months later, I was in my garage doing some maintenance on the generator when I got a text from Steve. Guess who just moved into Karen's old house? I raised an eyebrow and texted back. Someone sane, hopefully? A minute later, my phone buzzed again. I found a U.S. Marine flag hanging proudly from the front porch. I grinned. Karen had spent all that time trying to destroy me, trying to control everything, and now her house belonged to a veteran. The perfect ending. That night I sat on my porch, looking out over my peaceful, quiet street. The neighborhood was better. Karen was gone. And best of all, my generator was still running. I took a slow sip of my drink and laughed to myself. Some people never learn. But me, I always win. Underscore, 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 underscore. For a few months things were calm. The HOA had been restructured, the ridiculous rules were toned down, and my violation notices had disappeared. Steve wasn't being harassed about his lawn anymore. And most importantly, nobody was trying to steal my generator. Honestly, I thought that was the last I'd ever hear of Karen. But fate, he had other plans. Underscore, 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 underscore. One evening I was grilling on my back porch, beer in hand, when my phone rang. A known number. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello? A familiar, yet strained voice came through the speaker. I nearly dropped my beer. Karen, calling me? What kind of twisted alternate reality was this? I set my drink down and braced myself. What do you want, Karen? She sighed. Look, I know we've had our differences. I nearly laughed. That's one way to put it. There was a long pause before she finally muttered, I need help. I nearly choked on my drink. Karen, asking me for help. Oh, this was going to be good. I leaned back in my chair, smirking. Go on. Karen sounded miserable as she explained her situation. After she was forced to sell her house, she moved to a rental community across town. And guess what? The community had an even stricter HOA. I nearly fell out of my chair laughing. So let me get this straight, I said, wiping tears from my eyes. You moved into a new HOA neighborhood and they're making your life miserable? Her voice was tight with frustration. They're fining me for everything. My curtains aren't the right shade of beige. My car isn't parked exactly within the designated lines. They even sent me a warning because my welcome mat clashes with the aesthetic of the neighborhood. I had to mute my phone for a second just to laugh. Oh, the delicious irony. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. Though, what does this have to do with me? Karen hesitated. I need advice, she finally admitted. You fought the HOA and won. I thought maybe you could help me. This was it. The woman who had made my life a living hell for months. The woman who had tried to fine me, sue me, even have me arrested. And now? She was begging for my help. I took a slow sip of my beer, savoring the moment. Then, with a smirk, I said, Go on, Karen, tell me more. I let the silence stretch between us, savoring the moment. Karen's voice, usually so sharp and commanding, was now small and uncertain. Carol, I said, my tone even, let me ask you something. Do you regret what you did? The line went quiet. For the first time in her life, Karen was at a loss for words. Finally, she muttered, I didn't realize how bad it was. I thought I was doing the right thing. I shook my head. No, you weren't. You were on a power trip. And now? Now you're on the other side of it. I could almost hear her gritting her teeth. So, she hesitated, are you going to help me or not? I let the question hang in the air, dragging out the silence for a few more delicious seconds before I finally said, No. Karen sputtered. Wait, what? You heard me, I said. I don't help people who spent months trying to ruin my life. But you don't understand, she practically begged. They are worse than I ever was. I chuckled, shaking my head. Good, consider it karma. And with that, I hung up. Underscore, 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 underscore. A few days later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Steve. You're not going to believe this, he said, barely able to contain his laughter. Oh, this has got to be good, I said. Hit me. Karen got evicted. I blinked. Wait. What? Steve was dying on the other end of the line. The HOA at her new place fined her so much that she couldn't keep up with the payments. She tried to fight them, but unlike our old HOA, these guys have actual lawyers and deep pockets. I whistled. So, she lost? Oh, she didn't just lose, Steve wheezed. They took her to court, slapped her with legal fees, and now she's broke. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. So where's she now? Steve's laughter somehow got even louder. "You are not going to believe this," he gasped. "Try me. She's living in a rundown apartment complex outside of town. No HOA, no fancy rules, just her, in the cheapest place she could find." I grinned. Gertrude, the woman who once ruled over us with an iron fist, was now stuck in a tiny, rule-free apartment, completely powerless. Poetic justice at its finest. Underscore, 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 underscore. Veos tapik, S-S-E-R. U, underscore, 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 underscore. A few months later, I was at a community barbecue, enjoying some well-earned peace. The neighborhood was better. The new HOA leadership actually cared about the community. No more ridiculous fines. No more nonsense rules. And best of all, no more caring. Steve walked over, handing me a cold beer. "You ever think about what would happen if she had just left you alone?" he asked, smirking. I laughed, shaking my head. "Yeah, she'd still have her house." Steve chuckled, taking a sip. "Some people never learn." I raised my drink. "To Karen, may she enjoy her new HO-free life." Steve snorted. "You think she'll try to take over that apartment complex?" I smirked. "If she does, they'll kick her out, just like we did." I laughed out loud, and with that, we clinked our drinks together. For the first time in a long time, life was peaceful. And Karen, she was just a bad memory. Underscore, 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 underscore. The neighborhood was finally at peace. No more Karen. No more insane HRO rules. And most importantly, no more battles over my generator. The moment she was gone, the new HOA leadership took over and immediately made changes. They revoked all of Karen's nonsense rules. They removed unfair fines, and they even implemented a community emergency preparedness plan. And guess who they put in charge of it? Yet the same HOA that once tried to shut me down was now paying me to keep my generator running for the whole neighborhood. Oh, the irony. Underscore, 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 underscore. One evening I was sitting on my porch enjoying a beer when Steve walked over. "You really did it," he said, shaking his head. I raised an eyebrow. "Did what?" He smirked. "You went from being HO enemy number one to HO's most valuable asset." I chuckled, taking a sip of my drink. "Yeah, life's funny that way." Steve took a sip of his drink, leaning back with a grin. "So, what are you going to do now? With Karen gone, there's no one left to fight." I smirked, stretching out my legs and tapping my generator lightly with my knuckles. "Steve," I said, "I don't go looking for fights." I let the words linger before finishing with a chuckle. "But if another Karen ever shows up," I tapped the generator again, "I'll be ready." We clinked our bottles together in agreement, enjoying the peaceful sunset over the neighborhood Karen had once tried to control. But as I would soon find out, Karen wasn't completely done just yet. Underscore, 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 underscore. The final twist, Karen's last attempt at revenge. Just when I thought Karen had finally disappeared from my life for good, she made one last desperate move. One afternoon I was in my garage, working on my truck, when I got an email notification. I pulled out my phone. The subject line made me roll my eyes immediately. "You haven't seen the last of me." I sighed and opened it. The message was exactly what I expected. Karen, still clinging to her grudge. "You think you've won? Enjoy your little victory while you can. I'll be back. I'll find a way to make you pay. You haven't heard the last of Karen." I laughed out loud. After all this time, she was still holding on to this nonsense. I showed the email to Steve, who nearly spit out his drink, laughing. "Man, she really can't let it go, huh?" "Guess not," I said, shaking my head. "You think she'll actually try anything?" Steve asked. I smirked. "Nah, she's got no power anymore. She's just a keyboard warrior now." Steve grinned. "Wanna mess with her?" I thought about it for a moment, then typed out a simple response. "Who's Karen?" and hit send. Underscore 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 underscore. The final resolution, true peace at last. Months passed. Karenam completely faded into irrelevance. No more complaints. No more lawsuits. No more threats. Just peace. The HOA continued to function better than ever under its new leadership. In fact, the new HOA president even made a public statement apologizing for how I had been treated. But the best part? They offered to pay me a monthly stipend to keep my generator running for the entire community in case of emergencies. I had officially gone from HOA's biggest enemy to its greatest asset. Underscore 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 any underscore under the all I see underscore under happy goals underscore underscore underscore. One last Karen-related surprise. One day, while I was out shopping, I ran into an old HOA board member, one who had once sided with Karen. He looked different now. Gone was the smug attitude. Gone was the self-righteousness. Instead, he looked embarrassed. "Hey, Daniels," he said, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah?" He sighed. "I just wanted to say I was wrong about you, about the generator, about everything." "Oh?" I said, crossing my arms. "Yeah, Karen really screwed us over," he admitted. "We all see that now. Just wanted to say, no hard feelings?" I smirked and held out my hand. "No hard feelings?" He shook it, still looking sheepish. Then he hesitated. "Hey, did you ever hear what happened to Karen?" I grinned. "Oh yeah, I heard." "Crazy, huh?" he chuckled. "You think she'll ever come back?" I laughed. "If she does, she'll find out the hard way that, this time, she's the one who's powerless." Underscore 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 underscore. So, note, their ARX-8-. That night I sat on my porch, looking up at the clear sky, and let out a satisfied. Everything had worked out exactly as it should. Karen, she was just a bad memory. But tell me, did Karen get what she deserved? Should I have helped her when she begged for my advice, or do you think she had it coming? And the real question, will she try to make a comeback someday? Let me know in the comments. And if you love watching HOA Karens get what they deserve, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned, because as long as there are HOAs out there, you know there's going to be another Karen waiting to lose. See you in the next story.